Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has spent months cracking down on journalists' access to cover the military. It's a pastime for him, even as President Trump's war in Iran has dragged on for 6 months. Now, the crackdown has reached a news organization specifically created to serve American troops and their families. On Friday, the Pentagon fired the publisher, editor-in-chief, and a reporter with Stars and Stripes, a Pentagon-funded news outlet that reports on the military. The publication traces its history to the Civil War, and it has continuously served military communities since World War II. Even though it is funded by the Defense Department, Congress has protected its independence. But the Pentagon has made sweeping changes to the publication, rescinding a regulation requiring editorial integrity and banning the paper from running comics and reprinting articles from wire services, among other changes. Stars and Stripes editor-in-chief Eric Slavin says he was fired for insubordination for participating in an interview with CBS News where he said any hypothetical censorship of the newspaper would cross a red line. The Pentagon confirmed the firings to the Washington Post on Friday and said the employees have 3 to 5 days to appeal, but declined to offer any further comment. Eric Slavin, the editor-in-chief of the Stars and Stripes, who was fired on Friday by the Pentagon, joins us now. Eric, thank you so much for joining us. I am sorry for what happened to you, and I'm especially sorry to the military families who depend on Stars and Stripes to understand what's going on in their government and in their name, using their moms and dads and sons and sisters and brothers and uncles and aunts. I want to play for our viewers what you said on CBS Sunday morning, just to see if they think it is a fireable offense. Let's listen to that.
Do you have red lines in your mind?
Yes, I do.
Give me a red line.
Well, don't run a perfectly accurate story. Run this instead. Here it is, written by the Pentagon. That would be a red line.
I could not think of a more innocuous thing for someone who is a journalist and works in journalism to say. And this was on July 5th. It is August 23rd. So I guess number one question, what was happening between July 5th to August 23rd that led to your firing? And two, what is lost when there's a lack of independence at newspapers? I think our viewers understand, but this Stars and Stripes is a special case here.
Well, it was a surprise to me. I did not expect to be fired when I woke up on Friday. And really, there hadn't been any reaction since that CBS interview that I was aware of from the Office of Secretary of Defense for Public Affairs. During that time, we continued to report. We reported on what's been happening in Iran, particularly with the military families that have been evacuated from bases in the Middle East. And we reported on the USS Lincoln on August the 11th. Mm-hmm. We were the first media organization to report on many of the details aboard the ship after speaking with many sailors and many family members. And while the notice to propose separation doesn't say anything about our reporting, it did come roughly 10 days after that.
Mm.
Eric, I'm wondering if you think that this interview was simply an excuse to try to make an overall transformation to the way that this Pentagon is covered, as we've seen previous moves by this administration make, and various restrictions that have come into place to try to limit the scrutiny of Pete Hegseth. And if you've heard anything about who is going to take your job now.
It's hard for me to speak to their motives, but I can tell you that January the 15th, there was a tweet put out by the Pentagon Public Affairs Office that referred to sweeping changes. The same day, the Code of Federal Regulations was rescinded that spelled out the freedoms of Stars and Stripes that derived from Congress. And there was a leak to a administration-friendly outlet that talked about, among other things, replacing our reporters with military members. That's where it started. So, and then when our reporters followed up for comment, they declined to do so and referred us to the tweet and to that Daily Wire story. So I think it's been clear for some time that plans have been in place, but we certainly didn't expect this. As for their intentions for replacing me, I'm not aware of it, but I can tell you that for the first time in many decades, a few weeks ago, the Pentagon installed a Navy public affairs officer as military deputy to the publisher. And now the publisher has been fired.
So in addition to that, so they're getting rid of the independent leadership of Stars and Stripes. But in January, the Washington Post had this story: Stars and Stripes job applicants are asked if they back Trump policies. Applicants for positions at the publication have been asked, and I'm quoting, "How would you advance the president's executive orders and policy priorities in this role? Identify one or two relevant executive orders or policy initiatives that are significant to you and explain how you would help implement them if hired." Now, Eric, you and I, Jackie and Eugene, we intuitively understand why those questions should not be asked of journalists. But please explain to viewers for whom they might not see that as a problem, why asking job applicants those questions strikes at the heart of one, of journalism, and two, at the independence of Stars and Stripes.
Stars and Stripes aims to be as objective as humanly possible and nonpartisan, and we have traditionally enjoyed bipartisan support. We're one of the few things in 2020 when issues regarding Stars and Stripes came up. We had both Lindsey Graham and Elizabeth Warren as our supporters. It has always been critical to us that we avoid any type of partisanship. And independence, credibility is at the heart of that, and that credibility derives from us being able to present news that is independent of the Pentagon and of public affairs. And we've always strived to do that for service members and their families.
When you think about the people that you worked with, the people that worked for you, the months and years spent in the trenches covering things that are paramount to the safety of this country, the folks that are still there, what is your message to them? What have you heard from them since you've been fired?
Well, the toughest thing I ever had to do in my job was wake up every morning as Middle East bureau chief and check on my reporters in Kabul and other places that are in harm's way, make sure they're okay. Because they have had some pretty hairy situations out there. It's a tough job covering service members in wartime, and you're not out there with a rifle, you're out there with a camera and a pad. As for my staff or my former staff, I don't feel so bad for myself. I mean, I knew that I was in a leadership position and things can happen. But I am very concerned for them. I sincerely hope that they can continue to provide independent news to the military community. It's really them, and it's the military community that I'm thinking about.
And Eric, I do want to ask you about some breaking news that happened this week, with the Wall Street Journal reporting that the Army Secretary is expected to step down by the year's end. Dan Driscoll's plan to leave follows months of tension with Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. So it's not just unfriendly media outlets and journalists that the Pentagon is trying to purge from the building, but also anyone who mounts opposition to what Hegseth is doing right now. Can you talk a little bit more about Driscoll's departure?
Well, I can tell you what I've seen from our reporting and from other reporting. I don't have inside information, but certainly he was a supporter of General George, who also left and has been. And there's another general who, from what I've read, is favored by the Defense Secretary. So we are seeing changes at the Pentagon to align with what I assume is leadership's priorities. And we'll see what comes of that.
Eric Slavin, I just want to thank you for your service in journalism, and especially where you were doing it, and for the publication you were doing it. It was and remains vitally important. Thank you very much for coming to The Weekend.
Thank you for having me.